Week 7 of the fantasy football season. With 6 teams on bye, it's going to be thin this week at the tight end position. So this is tight end start sits every matchup. First matchup Thursday Night Football, Jacksonville Jaguars at the New Orleans Saints. Evan Ingram, we know he's been a top tight end over the last few seasons. Him and Trevor Lawrence have been on the same page. I know Lawrence not 100%, and he might not start and play in this ball game, but right now, still Evan Ingram, you throw him out there. I know it's a little bit of a tougher matchup versus Saint defense, but he's pretty much a tight end. Each and every week you start. Juwan Johnson's a sit for me. This team, they pretty much don't target the tight end. Besides last week, Taysom Hill, even though he's more of a gadget guy, did have 7 catches in that game. But Juwan Johnson, he had a good rapport last season with Andy Dalton. But this season with Derek Carr, not really getting into the mix of things. And we've seen Foster Monroe snaps go up as well a little bit over the last few weeks. So Juwan Johnson, a sit for me. Down to the Falcons. At the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Kyle Pitts and Jonnu Smith this season, they've been both tight ends that have had fantasy value, and they're up there top 10 in fantasy points at the position. So Kyle Pitts, the first 4 weeks of the season, didn't do much, but the last 2 weeks, double-digit fantasy games. He's starting to get things going. He's starting to play well. And Jonnu Smith, at least 8 or more fantasy points over the last 3 weeks. So right now, a lot of 2 tight end sets run over there by Arthur Smith and this Falcon team. And we know Desmond Ridder, he's not really getting the football to his wide receivers. I know Drake London's coming off a 125-yard receiving game, but he really hasn't done much this season. So right now, it's very odd to start 2 tight ends on the same team. But this week here, with the thin schedule and both these guys producing their starts for me. Now the Tampa Bay Bucks, Cade Otton, he just hasn't been a consistent tight end over the last few seasons since he's been into the league. Last year's rookie year, and so far with Baker Mayfield, no one's really been consistent besides Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, who's starting to get it going. So this week here, in a tough matchup versus stout defense, he's a sit. Now to the Raiders. At the Chicago Bears, Michael Mayer, the last 2 weeks, he's starting to get going and been a big part of this offense. So I'm obviously going to give him the starting nod in this one. Is Michael Mayer. Jacoby Myers been playing good football. Devontae Adams, he's still going out there, but he's not 100%. And Michael Mayer, I think this week, versus a bad defense that really can't stop anyone, even if it's Brian Hoyer or Aiden O'Donnell, could put up decent fantasy numbers. He's a star. Cole Kmet is a sit for me. He's been up and down this season. I know him and Justin Fields had a good rapport, but obviously Justin Fields is out for this game and possibly more games now with a thumb injury. So Cole Kmet last week, only 2.5 fantasy points. And this week here, I don't see much out of Tyson Bagent and this offense for Chicago. So he's a sit. Now to the Browns. At the Indianapolis Colts, David Njoku, very tough player. And a guy who obviously his career could have ended getting burned in a pit fire. But he's gone out there over the last 2 weeks and he's played, but pretty much hasn't put up numbers. And obviously not going to be 100% the whole season with those burns and just those internal injuries as well right now. So right now he's a gamer, no doubt about it, but not really a fantasy option at the Colts. He's a sit. Now to the Colts, it's been a tight end carousel over the last few seasons. Kylan Granson, he's been the number 1 target at the tight end position. Andrew Ogletree, he's been in and out. Mo Alley Cox, but none of these guys are really appealing. And Gardner Minshew, he's a consistent quarterback that can ball to the tight end early and often. The only guy really with value for the most part has been Michael Pittman, obviously, the whole season, and Josh Downs starting to emerge. So Kylan Granson a sit this week. Now to the Commanders. At the New York Giants, Logan Thomas 2 weeks ago over 20 fantasy points in PPR leagues. But last week he put in a stinker versus the Falcons, 1.20 fantasy points. But this week here, I think Logan Thomas bounces back. He's a big target. Him and Sam Howell have had good chemistry and good rapport. And this week here versus a weak Giant defense in a potential shootout, he's a start. Darren Waller, he's a start each and every week. Last week he looked pretty good. Is Darren Waller with Tyrod Taylor at quarterback. And to be honest, Tyrod Taylor, he's looked better than Daniel Jones has. I know it was 1 game, but it was versus a tough defense in the Buffalo Bills. And guys like Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, and Waller were getting their stats. So this week here, we'll see who's going to start at quarterback for this Giant team. Obviously, if Jones could go, he's going to play getting $40+ million a year. But Darren Waller pretty much each and every week is a start, even though he's had some bad ball games, but tight end's a very weak position. Now to the Lions. At the Baltimore Ravens, Sam Laporta, one of the best tight ends already in fantasy football in his rookie season in his first 6 games. And this line offense, a very good offense. St. Brown, Sam Laporta, David Montgomery was playing good before he went down. And Jared Goff just knows how to get the football to these players. So right now, once again, Laporta start each and every week. Mark Andrews a start each and every week, even though Mark Andrews, his numbers haven't been up to par like you think they would be this season. I know he missed a game early in the season, but Andrews, he's had some games where he's pretty much been non-existent. Last week he did have 11 fantasy points in PPR leagues. A matchup here with the Detroit Lions, I think he could put in a decent performance, and he's a start each and every week. Now to the Buffalo Bills at the New England Patriots. The Bills, they really haven't had that production out of the tight end position this season. So Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, two tight ends coming into the season that a lot of people thought could be productive for fantasy owners, but that obviously hasn't been the case. And once again this week in a matchup versus the Patriots, even though I know their defense hasn't been good this season, I can't trust these players, and they're sit for me. And now to Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry, he got off to a great start the first month of the season, but the last 2 weeks he's been non-existent. And this Patriot offense in a whole has just been a team not moving the football and making plays. So Hunter Henry this week, he's a sit for me. Definitely could bounce back in this one, but like I said, the last 2 weeks not showing much. So he's a sit. Now to the Cardinals at the Seattle Seahawks. Zach Ertz, first few weeks of the season was getting things going, but the last couple weeks we really haven't seen the targets and we really haven't seen the production, and teams have obviously sniffed out Joshua Dobbs and what the game plan's been. But this week he at the Seattle Seahawks, a team that he's familiar with, obviously is Zach Ertz, playing them 2 times a year now, being with the Cardinals a few seasons. I think Zach Ertz bounces back. They got to get him more involved in this game if they want a chance to pull off the upset at the Seahawks. And I have him as a start. Noah Fant, he's a sit for me. Noah Fant, we've seen some flashes from him this season, but then there's games where he don't show up at all or do much. So Noah Fant, he's 4th or 5th in the pecking order, obviously, in this offense. Kenneth Walker out of the backfield, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Smith Najwaba, who they're getting the ball more to now after the bye week in last week's game. So Noah Fant, like I said, not enough targets going his way, and he's not making enough plays to be a consistent fantasy option. He's a sit. Now to the Steelers at the Los Angeles Rams. Pat Freiermuth, he actually might be back after the bye week here, and that's good news here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Freiermuth so far in the early going's been a touchdown dependable tight end. So this week here in a matchup at the Los Angeles Rams, he's a borderline option. Deontay Johnson coming back into the lineup here for the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously. George Pickens, he's starting to get things going. And even Jalen Warren out of the backfield has been a good receiver. So right now, Freiermuth in this matchup is borderline. Tyler Higbee, he's a sit for me. Right now, he's falling down as well in the pecking order with Cooper Kupp back in the lineup. And he's a guy that pretty much is going to get his 80 to 100 yards minimum weekly as Cooper Kupp. And Puka Nacua is still making plays and going out there. And Tutu Atwell being the deep threat. So right now, Tyler Higbee, he's a tight end on bye weeks like this that possibly could be usable, but what we've seen from Higbee over the last few weeks, he's not a tight end you could have trust in, and a player I would sit this week at the position. The next matchup, Los Angeles Chargers at the Kansas City Chiefs. So right now, Gerald Everett did have a touchdown in last week's game versus the Dallas Cowboys in Week 6, but Gerald Everett hasn't been a consistent playmaker this season for fantasy owners in this Charger team. So last season he was a decent tight end, top 12 in fantasy points at the position, but this season it's more Keenan Allen getting targets, Joshua Palmer looking pretty decent, and that's for the most part power him being a tight end threat in the goal line and red zone packages. So right now Everett, he had a good game, no doubt about it, and found the end zone, but if he didn't have that touchdown, he wouldn't have had a good game at all pretty much for fantasy owners. He's a Travis Kelce, obviously a start each and every week, best tight end for fantasy football over the last few seasons. Him and Mahomes, one of the best combinations, if not the best combination, all pro football quarterback to receiver or tight end. And this week, once again, I think he has a monster game versus a weak Charger defense. And he's a start. Now to the Packers at the Denver Broncos, Luke Musgrave. I'm going to give him the nod in this one. Musgrave, I know he's been banged up with a concussion the last few weeks here, but now Musgrave getting the bye week. This Packer team trying to get things back in order offensively after losing the last 2 games to the Lions and the Vegas Raiders. And Luke Musgrave, early in the season, like I said, he was making plays. He was working the seam of the field. And this week, he's got a good matchup versus a weak defense in the Broncos. I've been getting torched week in and week out for the most part. So he's a start. Greg Dulcich, he's a sit for me. I know Dulcich came back in last week's ball game, but we really didn't see much out of him. And he's still not 100% as well because Dulcich came off IR pretty quick, in my opinion. But obviously, it's another weapon added to Russell Wilson's offense here. Like I said, last season, Dulcich and Wilson definitely had a good rapport, but I got to see a little bit more out of Greg Dulcich to put him in the starting lineup this week. So he's a sit. Now, Sunday Night Football, Miami Dolphins at the Philadelphia Eagles, Durham Smythe. He had some flashes early in the season, but the last few weeks he's been a non-factor. And this offense, let's be honest, it's Tyreek Hill, Waddle, and Raheem Mostert, the 3 playmakers and the 3 guys benefiting from Tua and this high-powered offense for fantasy football. So he's a sit. Dallas Goedert last 2 weeks, back in action now. 2 weeks ago at the Rams in Week 5, a monster game. 8 catches, 117 yards, a touchdown. And then last week, a solid game with over 9 fantasy points. Goddard back in the thick of things here in the offense. And this week here, it's going to be a shootout. Once again, I think he's a good start. And the final game of the week, San Francisco 49ers at the Vikings. So George Kittle, it's pretty much been 2 great games. And the other 4 games, he's done nothing this season. But now with Deebo Samuel possibly out and Christian McCaffrey out, possibly time recording this video, someone's going to have to catch the football and someone's going to have to find the end zone. So this week here in a matchup versus a weak Minnesota Viking defense, and still a potential shootout, even though with top playmakers out, most likely for both teams, with Jefferson obviously out for the Vikings, and Kittle can make plays in the middle of the field. We know he's been a big red zone target, obviously 11 touchdowns last season, 3 so far this year in 1 game versus Dallas. So he's a start. And TJ Hawkinson, the targets are going to go up for him, obviously, with this Minnesota Viking team without Justin Jefferson. And you got receivers that are young still in Jordan Addison and KJ Osborne, and even Powell, who's bounced around the league. So he's a start and a top 3 or 4 tight end each and every week. So that's tight end start sits every matchup for Week 7 of the fantasy football season.